Hey guys, David here, back again with another review of The Walking Dead, and this time it is for the episode Not Tomorrow Yet. Spoilers abound, and I'm starting to sense a pattern here. I feel like the writers of The Walking Dead had caught up with the complaints that people have been having, the running joke of how The Walking Dead will deliver an action-packed episode, and then the episode right after is just nothing but talking and blabber and filler, and just an episode that we just overlook because it's very obvious that they extended the season far beyond that than what it needs to be. 16 episodes, when in reality I think they can just get the same message across and deliver a great season within just 10 episodes. So I feel like they caught on with that, and they decided to compromise and say, okay, how about this? How about from now on, every episode is going to have like 10 or 15 minutes of that content within its first third or so, and then the remaining 2/3 is going to have material lifted from the comics and exciting material to keep you on edge. And I feel like they replicated that formula from last week's episode on over to this week's episode, Not Tomorrow Yet, in which the team decides to stop by Alexandria, and we actually find out what's been happening with Carol and Morgan, which is something that I was wishing they had done in last week's episode, and I'm glad that they went ahead and did it with this one. So my wish was granted, and we get caught up with the two of them. And out of the two, the one that got the weaker end of the stick was Morgan, because he kind of repeated his shtick about not wanting to kill anybody, and by the end of the episode, we see him building a cell similar to that character. Oh man, I'm blanking out on his name, but the guy that trained him about the arts of with the stick and how to deflect people and how to spare a life, that kind of thing. He is doing the same thing that he did, creating a cell to keep people alive, except I can understand, it didn't bother me, but this is the kind of, I've hit that point where, though it doesn't bother me, I can definitely see why people would get bothered by Morgan as a character now, because of how he's willing to spare people that we've seen escape and then come back and get somebody killed or put somebody in peril, which is why it's a little strange that nobody ratted out on Morgan. I understand Carol, because what the first 10 or 15 minutes of this episode tackled when it centered on Carol, because Carol had an awful lot of screen time in this episode, and I loved that an awful lot of it was devoted to her development as a character since the mid-season premiere, which I still stand should have been the mid-season finale from last year. Because remember how in that review I stated that I wonder if Carol will feel bad somehow, because in the end it was her torment of Sam saying they're gonna tie you to a tree and eat you up while you're still alive. It was her little monologue there that kind of got inside his head, and that's why he ended up getting kind of killed. And it's almost like Carol recognizes that, because at the beginning of this episode we see her in front of Sam's grave, puts down the cookies, and by the end of this episode she's telling Maggie to stay behind because she knows that she's pregnant and she shouldn't be out there. That's an interesting take on Carol, just as long as they don't get rid of that badassery that we know her to be, which I think it's still there. I still feel like Carol is that same badass that she has become, only with a new wrinkle to her character added on that feels genuine. So out of the two, Carol came out on top as being the bigger highlight, whereas Morgan is doing the same thing of saying, oh, we should spare people coming, standing up in the church and saying we shouldn't go through with this by killing all of them and give them an option to either walk away or face the consequences. But Rick and the group decide to take the former and just get to them first before they come to them, like things have happened in the past, and therefore Rick creates a plan to go over to this compound that guy was talking about and take out all of Negan's men, take out the armory, get as many weapons as possible, and also rescue the brother of that one guy and bring him back to Hilltop, as their way of holding up the deal for the supplies that they get in last week's episode. So they go through with this plan, but I feel like they should know better than to follow Rick's lead at this point, because if Rick created a plan, it's gonna go bad. And for a second it didn't seem like it was going that route, because it was action-packed, everything was going well. Sure, it was kind of tense, but it looks like the team was holding their own. Sometimes a little too cleanly. I feel like somebody should have been hit by a bullet somehow, but everybody walked out of it scot-free, at least physically, because what I did appreciate about that entire sequence, once they got to the compound and the little standoff with the guy and the head and the two henchmen. By the way, did anybody catch Johnny Depp's cameo in this episode? Johnny Depp had a cameo as a head, and it was a prosthetic head. I don't know where they got the mold of Johnny Depp's head, but then again, this is Johnny Depp, the guy who spends half of his movie career in the makeup chair, so I guess at some point they were bound to get his his sculpt somehow. But he's one of the three heads that are laid down, and they pick out which one's going to look the most like Gregory. Again, bringing back a little bit of that newfound humor within Walking Dead of Rick punching the nose. I like moments like that. I hope they keep moments like that for the remainder of the season. But anyways, that entire sequence was exhilarating and fun. I feel like somebody should have not necessarily gotten killed, but at least wounded somehow to say that, hey, it wasn't the most polished of plans. And we know that by the end of the episode, that wasn't going to be the case. But I wish it would have been a little bit more guerrilla style instead of just go in and just flush all the bad guys out. What I did appreciate, though, was the emotional toll it took on Glenn and Heath putting those guys out, because at first I was kind of like, why is they making it such a big deal to go in and kill these guys? They're like, we're really going to kill these guys. We really are going to do this. I'm like, you've done this before. I've seen you do this before. But then they apply the context of how before it would be these guys coming at them at a distance and then having to act upon self-defense. Here they're going in. They're being the offenders. They're going in. These guys are just sleeping. They went to bed expecting to wake up to another day. And in come Glenn and Keith as Grim Reapers to take their lives away just like that. While they're not doing. Very up close and personal. So adding that context, I kind of understood why they were feeling sick in that room. I'm surprised Glenn did not feel any sicker when he saw those photos. Foreshadowing. So the whole plan goes accordingly, so much so that even Michonne's kind of like, something's off. Like, one of them should have been Negan. And sure enough, we hear the engine of a motorcycle revving, and we see one guy that they happen to miss, and he happens to be escaping on Daryl's bike. And that's where we get our big cliffhanger that has me tremendously excited for next week's episode. Voice on the walkie-talkie, lower your weapons. We got a Maggie and Carol that you might want to talk about. And that was very interesting because it raises so many questions. Daryl's bike has resurfaced. So does that mean that the crossbow, as well as the people that took it from him in that one episode, are near? Are they in cahoots with Negan, which is very likely that they are. They're saviors themselves. And that woman on the radio, is she the woman that was with that guy that took Daryl and Daryl's crossbow and bike? And what does this mean for the preceding episode? Because like I said, they were keeping this pattern of having the first 15 minutes or so be talking and a couple of filler moments here and there. And don't get me wrong, this episode had a couple of them where they still stumbled upon that soap opera type deal, especially Abraham leaving Rosita, and Rosita was like, no, like that was legitimately a soap opera right there. All that was left was for Abraham to say, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It was literally that shit. So I was rolling my eyes there for a quick moment, but fortunately, just like last week's episode, the ball got rolling once they executed the plan that seemed like it was going well, only for it to end in a cliffhanger in the capture of Maggie and Carol. So very exciting stuff. Looking forward to seeing how the next week's episode opens. And I think at this point, people should really question Rick's decision-making skills, but because holy damn, I feel like at this point they should Rick even himself should not even be allowed to create plans anymore. All right, just let somebody else do it. So I give the next what was it called? Not tomorrow yet. Sorry, not tomorrow yet. An 8 out of 10. Once again, on par with last week's episode, where the first 15 minutes or so had a couple of rough starts, but as soon as they get with the plan and focus on what's at stake here, that's when the episode is at its finest. So let me know what you guys thought of this week's episode of The Walking Dead. What do you think is going to happen in next week, since they have to start with this cliffhanger of meeting who's at the other end of that walkie-talkie? And do you think that somehow Daryl's fate might be connected with Negan and the Saviors? Because there is a theory out there that they might be doing a bait and switch from the comics, and Daryl might be the one that will get to meet a fine woman named Lucille. I'll see you guys next time.